Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rogues Gallery, where we'll be taking an in-depth look at the enemies of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, whilst exhibiting some of my favourite artwork for each character. So let's waste no time and begin this tour with some alternate evil versions of Eternia's hero. Anti-He-Man was the master of Anti-Eternia, a hellish world located in the universe of darkness. The evil counterpart to He-Man would raise his sword and call upon the power of Hell Grayskull. This undefeated warrior entered Eternia when Skeletor built a world converter and used it to open an interdimensional gate between the two realities. Instead of joining forces with Skeletor, Anti-He-Man expelled him from Snake Mountain before challenging He-Man to combat. However, when Man-at-Arms and Skeletor destroyed the world converter, Anti-He-Man vanished. In another reimagining of this character, it was Adam who invoked the power of Hellskull and became the Anti-He-Man before using his newfound strength to overthrow his home world. A third origin story for this character revealed that Anti-He-Man returned to Eternia again after the world converter's destruction. On this occasion, he would challenge He-Man, who was now King He-Man. However, during their battle, a third version of He-Man in Faker attacked them both. This three-way battle devastated the landscape, but when Anti-He-Man pulled Faker through the vortex to Anti-Eternia, Faker would have to serve him as his new master. Of course, that brings us on nicely to the other nefarious version of He-Man in Faker. Originally presented as a blue-skinned robotic replica of He-Man, Faker was designed to serve Skeletor. With the ability to replicate He-Man's power, this creation impersonated He-Man in order to distract King Randor from uncovering the great secret of Keldor. Wise to the masquerade, however, Randor managed to defeat Faker by impaling him through the chest with his spear. Other interpretations of the character have presented him as an invention of Man-at-Arms, built to cover for He-Man when Prince Adam is required elsewhere. However, when Faker was abandoned after his first mission, he was salvaged by Triclops from the Royal Junkyard. At this point, he was reprogrammed at Skeletor's request to replace He-Man and convince the people of Eternia that their hero had betrayed King Randor and turned to evil. We will now switch our attention to some villains who use magic instead of might to battle the most powerful man in the universe. This master wizard was raised by evil mystics in the Dunes of Doom and learnt the advantages of magic over technology. After witnessing the suffering of warriors in the Dark Hemisphere, Marzo decided that Eternia would benefit from him being the planet's leader. With this in mind, he would stage a series of strategic uprisings across Eternia before challenging King Miro for the crown. However, Marzo failed to defeat the king's army and used his magical amulet to banish him into another dimension. The king's sons would work together to extract their revenge on the wizard by trapping him in the form of a powerless old man. Our next magical rogue is the sinister sorceress known as Chakotay. Known as the most dangerous sorceress on Eternia's Dark Hemisphere, Chakotay possesses formidable powers that include casting illusions and projecting energy blasts from her hands. However, when the rest of her people, known as the Gars, realised that she wanted to plunge the planet into darkness, they lured her into the sunlight and buried her in the House of Darkness. Unfortunately, the shape-shifting wizard Mask raised the temple from the sands of time and opened the door to darkness once more until He-Man defeated the duo. Speaking of the dark, our next villain is the stuff of nightmares because he will make you face your greatest fears. This evil ghost was the ruler of an alien dimension who had the ability to induce terror in his victims by forcing them to see visions of their greatest fears. The one known as Scareglow was summoned by Skeletor, but initially refused to serve the Overlord of Evil and attacked him with his intimidation powers. However, this proved futile against Skeletor, who feared nothing and blasted Scareglow with his Havoc Staff. He would plead with Skeletor to return him to his realm, which the Overlord of Evil would use to his advantage, explaining that he would only free him if he defeated He-Man. With little choice left, Scareglow would embark on a mission to attack the heroic warriors with the power of his fear-inducing glow and the Scythe of Doom. He immediately saw success by instilling so much fear into Prince Adam that he could not transform into He-Man. However, Champ's intervention gave Adam just enough time to change into He-Man, who subsequently defeated him. Ultimately, Scareglow was forced to remain on Eternia and serve Skeletor, but vowed to discover the Overlord of Evil's fear in order to extract his revenge. We will now turn our attention to another group of villains in the sinister Snake Men. During Preternian times, Squeeze was one of King Hiss's Snake Men, but was banished to a nameless dimension by the Council of Elders before he was freed by his aforementioned leader. Once liberated, King Hiss assigned Squeeze and Snakeface the task of kidnapping Queen Marlena, however they seized the disguised sorceress instead. In the 2002 series, Squeeze served as one of the leading generals of King Hiss, but was imprisoned within the void beneath Snake Mountain for thousands of years until he was freed by Cobra Khan and General Rattler. Our next member of the Serpentine villains has a lethal bite, and is none other than Fangor. This character is known as the mechanic of the Snake Men, building much of their tools and gadgets. Aside from serving as their engineer, he can remove his massive fangs and use them as knives before they regrow again. Fangor was said to be the first of the Snake Men to discover the power of technology in an early battle with the Horde Empire. Eventually, he would access the technology of the Cosmic Key from Gwildor, which allowed him to help save his race during the second Ultimate Battleground. Our next member of this group is the rather unimaginatively named Snakeface. This character possessed a more humanoid appearance than others of his race, but could project a tangle of snakes through his eyes, tongue, and scalp. Much like the mythical Medusa, he had the ability to turn anyone who looked upon him to stone. Snakeface was banished to a nameless dimension by the Council of Elders, but when King Hiss acquired the power of the Viper Tower, he liberated Snakeface along with Squeeze so that they could serve him once more. Snakeface would utilize his powers to turn people to stone until He-Man used his sword to revert the effect before reflecting Snakeface's power to transform all the Snake Men into stone. In the 2002 series, Snakeface was also trapped within the void beneath Snake Mountain until he was liberated by Cobra Khan and General Rattler. Following his release, he assisted King Hiss in subduing Skeletor's evil warriors by turning them all into stone. However, his powers failed to work on Skeletor. Subsequently, Snakeface accompanied Rattler and King Hiss to Castle Grayskull, where they battled with He-Man, who used his shield to show Snakeface's own reflection, which turned him to stone. We shall now move on to Snakeface's liberator in Cobra Khan. This man-Cobra hybrid only has loyalty to one person, himself. Cobra Khan will align himself with whoever best serves his own purposes at any given time, which is why he's had dual allegiance to both Skeletor and King Hiss. This member of the Repton species dwelt within the underground kingdom beneath a stone pyramid, but proved to be a real snake even to his own kind. This was most evident when he extinguished the furnace that heated the Repton kingdom just so he could collect on King Pythos' reward, which would see anyone become ruler for exposing the guilty party. Khan would try to frame He-Man for his own treachery, but was forced to flee when his elaborate plan was foiled. Branded a traitor by the rest of his race, he was forced into exile, where he subsequently served Skeletor. The 2002 series saw him betray Skeletor, where he pledged his allegiance to the Overlord of Evil just so he could gain access to the snake pit beneath Snake Mountain. Once there, he could free his ancestors who were imprisoned within the void millennia ago. He eventually freed the Snake Men and competed against General Rattler to be the #1 henchman of King Hiss. We continue our tour of the snake-themed villains with the terrifying Tongue Lasher. Much like his name suggests, Tongue Lasher is renowned for having an extending venomous tongue which he uses like a whip against his opponents. Unlike the other Snake Men, Tongue Lasher avoided incarceration within the Void and later joined the evil Horde. However, when King Hiss was released from the Void, he summoned Tongue Lasher back to his side, but was displeased when he served Hordak in his absence. Keen to redeem himself, Tongue Lasher proved to be a loyal servant to King Hiss, and even paralysed He-Man when he poisoned him with his venomous tongue. In the 2002 series, however, this hulking Snake Man was sealed within the Void alongside the other Snake Men before he was freed by Cobra Khan and General Rattler. Despite this, Tongue Lasher had shown little appreciation for Khan, regarding him as a weak descendant of the real Snake Men. Our penultimate Snake Man serves as second in command to their king. He is of course the hulking Rattler. This mountainous member of the Snake Men has the ability to elongate his neck in order to ambush his victims. Rattler, as the right-hand snake of King Hiss, served as the general of the entire Snake Man army. In the 2002 series, Rattler was trapped in the void along with the rest of the Snake Men, but was the first to be freed by Cobra Khan. Ultimately, they would free King Hiss when they collaborated with Evil Lyn to trick Skeletor into releasing him. Unfortunately, the void was sealed by Zodak and He-Man before Rattler could liberate the rest of his group. They would quickly take command of Snake Mountain, but Rattler was imprisoned again when they failed to take Grayskull. Despite this, Rattler would escape captivity by shedding his skin as a distraction, but became angry at Khan after he discovered that he knew of his place of incarceration but did not come to his rescue. Tensions between him and Khan grew when Rattler realised that he took advantage of his imprisonment to position himself as the new right-hand man of King Hiss. Our final Snake Man is the leader of the Serpentine villains and is none other than King Hiss. As the ruthless ruler of a race of interstellar conquerors called the Snake Men, King Hiss is one of He-Man's most powerful enemies. By adopting the form of a human, he hides his true form, which consists of 5 intertwined serpents. Hiss and his humanoid Snake Men were involved in a lengthy war to conquer the planet Eternia when they were eventually overcome by the combined magical powers of the planet's elders. Eventually, they were all imprisoned within another dimension by Hero and his mentor Eldor. After a millennia of imprisonment, King Hiss and a group of his followers were liberated by Skeletor, who wanted to unearth the secrets of the Snake Men. They would form an uneasy alliance to destroy He-Man and conquer Eternia, however they both conspired to eliminate the other once their mission was accomplished. Despite being purely venomous to his enemies, Hiss is loyal to his Snake Men and is respected by them all, but does favour some over others, which can cause friction. Believing his race to be superior, Hiss sees others as beneath him, only serving as food or slaves to the Snake Men. In the 2002 series, the lore of these characters was fantastically expanded to reveal that Snake Mountain actually belonged to King Hiss and served as his headquarters. This was said to be the petrified body of Serpos, the god of the Snake Men. Inevitably, Hiss would reclaim Snake Mountain and take his rightful throne as king. As one of the oldest villains within the gallery, Hiss was said to have plagued Eternia in ancient times and was initially defeated by Hordak and his evil horde before Hiss battled King Grayskull for dominance even before the days of the Elders. When King Grayskull perished in his victory over Hordak, the Snake Men returned to conquer Eternia, but this time had to contend with the Elders and Zodak. Although Hiss unleashed the gigantic snake form of Snake Mountain, he was still defeated by the power of the Elders, who imprisoned Hiss along with his army in a timeless dimension called the Void. When Hiss was finally liberated from the Void by his descendant Cobra Khan, he would defeat Skeletor and reclaim Snake Mountain just like he did in the original comics. Ultimately on this occasion, he would have to deal with the might of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. We now head over to our next faction of vile villains who may be even more formidable than the Snake Men. I am of course referring to the Evil Horde. This member of the Evil Horde is a multi-bodied monster who can reform himself into thousands of different forms to confuse his enemies. Originally, Modulok was a former slave of Skeletor who defected to the Evil Horde as he was aware of Hordak's hatred of Skeletor. He would work with his new master to plot a scheme involving his body parts being sent piece by piece to the Royal Palace of Eternia in separate cardboard boxes labelled as gifts for members of the heroic warriors. However, Man-at-Arms became suspicious and had the body parts examined by the sorceress. Once inside Grayskull, Modulok reformed and stole a forbidden weapon from the castle. Eventually, a battle between He-Man, Skeletor and Hordak ensued, where Modulok exhibited his shape-shifting abilities, even becoming 2 separate beings. Let's be sure to keep an eye out for our next villain, who is the one known as Mantenna. Another odd-looking member of the Evil Horde is Mantenna, who used his extendable eyes to serve as a spy for Hordak. Aside from surveying his targets, his eyes could also fire powerful energy blasts. Additionally, this insectoid creature possessed sharp fangs and fought alongside Hordak when the merciless leader laid siege to Castle Grayskull with an army of Horde troopers. Our next member of the evil horde is a real parasite because he is Mosquito. This insectoid cyborg member of the evil horde drains the blood from his opponents like a mosquito. Initially, this minion of Hordak was tasked with draining the energy from the sorceress, which would allow Hordak to create fake holographic visions of her. This would see him come into conflict with He-Man, where he would prove to be a formidable opponent for Eternia's hero. Our penultimate ogre from the evil horde is none other than the brutish behemoth known as Grislaw. This urban legend was infamous among the Eternians, who believed him to be a wild man-beast which roamed the night stalking its prey. However, the nightmare became a reality all too soon when Grislaw proved to be a member of the evil horde hired by Hordak for his brutish strength to fight against He-Man and the heroic warriors. Grislaw would work alongside Hordak, Leech and Mantenna to defeat the Snake Men during ancient Eternia. However, when Grislaw and the evil horde tried to attack King Grayskull, they were defeated before being imprisoned in the dimension of Despondos. Our next member of the evil horde is none other than the leader himself, Hordak. Leader of an army of demonic warriors known as the Evil Horde, Hordak is a former mentor of Skeletor but was betrayed by his apprentice who trapped him in another dimension before beginning his own quest for Eternia. This sinister sorcerer subsequently turned his attention to science, using a combination of magic and technology to conquer Eternia. In the 2002 series, Hordak's origins were expanded as he was portrayed as a dark warlord from ancient Eternia who caused King Grayskull's death before being banished to the dark dimension of Despondos. Despite promising to repay his debt for saving his life, Skeletor betrayed his former master again when he asked for freedom from Despondos. Instead of liberating him, Skeletor actually tried to trap him in the dimension permanently. Although Hordak and the Evil Horde are recognised as the villains of She-Ra, they have clashed with He-Man on numerous occasions. We will now head into our final group of villains who are arguably the most infamous rogues in this gallery. They are simply and aptly known as the Evil Warriors. This man-spider hybrid is said to be a master escape artist who lurks in the shadows before entrapping his enemies within his web. Webstor, a member of the Arachna race, is renowned for being a silent evil warrior who wears a pack strapped to his back containing a long rope with a grappling hook at the end. This allows him to scale walls, escape traps, and subdue his enemies. As disliked as arachnids are, our next villain brings a literal meaning to the term double trouble because he is too bad. This two-headed evil warrior actually consists of two incompatible beings who are forced to share one body. As a result, the two heads perpetually argue with each other, with neither wanting to accept blame for their mistakes or failings. When this character's origin story was expanded, it revealed that Skeletor hired two of the most formidable bounty hunters to destroy He-Man. These were the cunning blue-skinned Tuvar and the fearsome purple-toned Badra. Unfortunately, as lethal as they were individually, the two could not work together due to their long-standing rivalry. Ultimately, the collaboration ended in disaster when He-Man managed to escape due to their bickering. As a result, Skeletor punished the bounty hunters by actually binding them together as one with his magic. Subsequently, they would attempt to divide themselves back into two separate beings with the lost spell of separation. However, that also ended in a catastrophic disaster. The pair are now forced to share each other's company till the bitter end, which is just too bad. We move from one prickly situation to another with our next rogue, who is simply known as Spikor. Originally known as Clefton from a mountain cavern in the Eternian village of Nordling, this blacksmith was fused with an enchanted suit of spiked armour and a formidable mystic trident. However, when he attempted to steal the sacred scroll from the city's high priests, he was banished from his home and became a pariah who wandered the sands of time. He was eventually discovered by Skeletor, who saw his natural talent to forge weapons and recruited him to battle against the Snake Men. Now as Spikor, this deadly warrior serves Skeletor by creating new armour and arms like the Terror Claws for the Overlord of Evil. We now move on from the villain known as Spikor to another named Stinkor. Stinkor belonged to a race of humanoid skunks called the Pelesians and was infamous as the stench of evil. This evil master of odors got his name due to his ability to release a toxic stench from his body that rendered foes immobile. In the 2002 series, his backstory was expanded, where he was revealed to be a common thief named Odyphus, but mutated into Stinkor after a chemical accident gave him his pungent odour. This smell was so foul that even he was not immune to it and required an oxygen mask to breathe properly. This breathing apparatus was later adapted to control his stench into focused blasts against his victims. We now transition from a sinister smell to an evil seed, who is our next villain. In the 1980s cartoon, Evil Seed was introduced as a villain who gave a group of farmers some seeds that eventually grew out of control, causing damage to the Dam of the Ancients, so it flooded the fertile plains. Eventually, the royal palace was also covered with these vines, and its inhabitants were taken prisoner by the one known as Evil Seed. In a desperate attempt to defeat this botanical villain, Skeletor and He-Man actually worked together. Subsequently, Evil Seed was reintroduced in the 2002 series as the nefarious being who was imprisoned in the root cellar. After masquerading as Mossman, Evil Seed would trick Orko into planting seeds that eventually grew into vines that captured the inhabitants of the royal palace. At this point, Evil Seed would extract his revenge on all for gorging on plant life. On this occasion, however, He-Man would work with a real Mossman to bring the evil one to justice. We will now take a look at a couple of truly heavy-handed henchmen, but we'll start with Jitsu. The evil martial artist known as Jitsu possesses a powerful enlarged golden right hand which delivers formidable strikes. This master swordsman is considered to be the rival of heroic warrior Fisto. One possible origin story is from the German Masters of the Universe magazine titled The Mysterious Martial Artist. In this story, Jitsu is a karate master from the East Empire of Eternia who wanders the planet searching for worthy rivals. Skeletor convinced him to fight He-Man, but when they clashed, Jitsu was awestruck by the Eternian hero's strength. However, another origin story suggests that Jitsu was a bandit rescued from the prison star by Keldor during the Great Unrest. As thanks, Jitsu offered his services to Keldor and remained loyal after his transformation to Skeletor. During the Battle of Gretori Bridge, Jitsu was wounded by his arch-enemy Fisto, resulting in his hand being replaced by a golden bionic version constructed by Triclops. We will now leave the villain with a humongous hand for a rogue with a colossal claw in the villain known as Clawful. This member of the evil warriors seems to be an anthropomorphic crustacean-like creature. With his large sharp pincers that are capable of crushing the life out of his opponents, Clawful is a real handful for any opponent, but perhaps lacks intelligence. This vicious combatant led a group of evil warriors in a bid to capture the heroic Fisto and Stridor. Once captured, Skeletor forced Fisto to battle Clawful, Jitsu, and Whiplash in a combat arena where he proved victorious after jamming Clawful's oversized right claw with a log. Clawful also participated in Keldor's attack on the Hall of Wisdom, but was trapped with the other evil warriors behind the Mystic Wall for years before they finally broke free. Despite serving Skeletor loyally, his stupidity often sees him incur the wrath of the Overlord of Evil. Our next monstrous villain also possesses a lethal organic weapon in his menacing tail. He is of course Whiplash. This reptilian man hybrid is another member of the evil warriors who gets his name from his long bulky tail, which he uses as an offensive weapon. He debuted in the mini-comic Clash of Arms, where he was presented as Skeletor's main henchman and proved to be Fisto's most challenging opponent within the combat arena. During this battle, he easily overpowered Fisto, causing him serious damage in the process until He-Man intervened. This character's background was subsequently expanded in the 2002 series, where it was revealed that he belonged to a race of underground-dwelling reptilian creatures called the Caligars. This subterranean race would banish Whiplash, who they considered a dishonourable traitor for joining Skeletor's evil warriors. Our next members of the evil warriors also possess formidable weapons, but in this case they have been technologically enhanced. The first of this pair is the villain known as Trapjaw. This cyborg criminal belongs to the Gar species, a blue-skinned alien race from another dimension. Trapjaw, originally known as Cronus, possesses a robotic arm that can connect to a variety of weapons. However, his most defining feature is his mechanical serrated jaw, which delivers a deadly bite. Originally, Skeletor accidentally brought Trapjaw back with him when trying to return from an alien dimension. By chance, Trapjaw landed inside Castle Grayskull and managed to harness the castle's power, almost besting He-Man in the process. He proved to be such a deadly threat that He-Man and Skeletor actually collaborated in order to defeat him. Ultimately, when Trapjaw lost his powers, Skeletor recruited him to his evil warriors. In another origin story, Cronus grew wary of Skeletor's rule and questioned his ability as a leader. Due to this, he was banished from Snake Mountain, where he formed his own army of followers to go to war with Skeletor. Unfortunately for Cronus, he was defeated by Skeletor, who left him with a broken arm and shattered jaw, which Triclops later repaired with some cybernetic upgrades. At this point, Cronus was renamed Trapjaw and became one of Skeletor's fiercest warriors. Since we mentioned him, we should move straight on to our next rogue, who is arguably the most intelligent evil warrior. Originally, Triclops was a skilled swordsman who was summoned by Skeletor to battle He-Man. As well as having immense strength, Triclops used his various vision modes and optic blasts to blind He-Man in battle and almost got the better of him before he was defeated by the most powerful man in the universe. Subsequently, his origin was reimagined, where he was a noble swordsman who was blinded by a magic spell. As a result, Triclops would use his enhanced sense of smell and sound to defend a scientific research center for its owner. As the guardian of his employer's building, he would protect it from attacks. However, when Keldor attacked, the two came into conflict before he tricked Triclops into believing the tower's owner had been using him. Keldor would later reward Triclops with a mechanical visor, which restored his sight, but also secretly served to keep Triclops loyal to him. In time, Triclops would go on to become Keldor's and subsequently Skeletor's main inventor. He remains as one of Skeletor's most intelligent and loyal warriors. We now dive into the next rogue on the list, who is none other than the menacing Merman. Merman was one of Skeletor's earliest and most prominent henchmen after Beastman. This self-proclaimed king of the seas ruled his own underwater kingdom and even managed to defeat his rival Acurus in battle. Soon after, Merman joined Keldor and fought alongside him during the Battle of the Hall of Wisdom, after which he was imprisoned behind the Mystic Wall in the Dark Hemisphere. In the original minicomics, Merman wished to be Skeletor's equal and offered to help the Overlord of Evil to defeat He-Man in exchange for the hero's weapons. Despite successfully stealing He-Man's harness and power sword, Merman was defeated by Stratos. Another one of the original members of the Evil Warriors is the epitome of a beastly brute because he is Beastman. As Skeletor's closest and most loyal follower, Beastman has remained by Skeletor's side since he was recruited by his master from the Berserker Islands. Despite initially using his immense strength to devour Keldor, Beastman would swear loyalty to him when he saved his life. Eventually, Beastman would return the favour to his master when his face was burnt by acid during the attack on the Hall of Wisdom. Aside from his brute strength, Beastman has the ability to telepathically control all beasts aside from dragons. He once even managed to gain control of many faces when he was in beast form. Finally, he even maintained a bestiary in the caverns beneath Snake Mountain, where he kept cages full of monstrous creatures to perform his bidding. We now move on to our second female villain of this rogues gallery, who is none other than Evil Lyn. In all the incarnations of this character, Evil Lyn has been portrayed as an evil witch who served as Skeletor's second in command. However, by using her vast intelligence, she has aspirations to seize her master's powers and rule Eternia for herself. In the minicomics, her treacherous personality was displayed when she tried to ally herself with Hordak against Skeletor, however he rejected her offer. In the 2002 series, Evil Lyn was revealed to be the daughter of the powerful sorcerer, the Faceless One, who was the guardian of the powerful Ramstone of Zelacia. Despite her father's disapproval of her romantic relationship with Keldor, Evil Lyn would stand by him even when he transformed into the evil Skeletor. Last but not least, we will take a look at the leader of the Evil Warriors, the oldest and most prominent of He-Man's enemies. He is of course the one and only Skeletor. Originally, this nefarious demon was an inhabitant of another dimension who entered Eternia during the Great Wars when he was accidentally transported through a black hole. At this time, Skeletor would attempt to take advantage of his situation by trying to open a portal back to his home world in order to allow his people to invade and conquer Eternia. In the 2012 DC Comics, Skeletor, known as Keldor, was the heir to the throne of Eternia until his father King Miro decided to crown Randor instead. This was because Keldor was half Gar and therefore considered a half-blood. As a result, Keldor would grow bitter and would bide his time as Randor's advisor, waiting for the perfect opportunity to usurp his brother. Whilst on the brink of death due to a curse, Keldor stabbed Randor and used his blood to become Skeletor with the aid of his mentor Hordak. Despite having various origins, my preferred version remains the backstory from the 2002 series. In this story, he remains as Randor's half-brother Keldor, a warlord who trained under Hordak before recruiting a band of warriors to attack the Hall of Wisdom. During this invasion, Randor and his officers stopped Keldor, who refused to concede defeat and threw a vial of acid at Randor, who blocked it with his armor, causing it to splash back into Keldor's face. Ultimately, his master Hordak would save him by transforming his melting face into that of a skull and gave him his new alias and powers as Skeletor. No matter which origin story we are presented with, one thing remains consistent: Skeletor's desire to possess the secrets of Castle Grayskull and become the master of the universe. That brings an end to this episode of the Rogues Gallery. I hope that I did not exclude too many of your favourite characters, but I cannot possibly include them all as there are so many. I mean, Mattel were really churning these guys out in the 80s. Please let me know which other galleries you would like me to visit for future uploads, but until then, it's goodbye from me. Take care.